I'm watching the participant numbers go up as we start this session, and probably like every good virtual call, we'll filibuster for just a moment while folks come in from the waiting room. But really thrilled to have you with us today. My name is Jared Liu. I am the Senior Associate Director of Admission at Yale School of Management, where it is a daily privilege to be associated with. And I'm joined today by 5 current students, as well as colleagues from the admissions team. So we're going to do a few things today. First and foremost, we're going to have just an open-ended conversation. This is really an opportunity to hear your questions and try to help you no matter where you are in your application journey. And so my colleagues are going to be behind the scenes collating questions for us. So what I would encourage you to do after we do introductions in a moment is throughout the session, feel free to put your questions into the Q&A session, and we'll do our best to get to as many of those questions as quickly as we can. But really thrilled to be moderating this panel today. Specifically, it is billed for international students. And so, again, thrilled to be here with current students who represent the varying cultures and diversity across the world at SOM. And so I think you're going to hear some pretty special things. But I think it's one of the hallmarks of Yale School of Management is the globalism. So I'm really thrilled to be on this session. What I'll encourage you to do with your questions is really to, for the most part, keep them about the experiences and perspectives that the current students can offer. And we'll kind of divide up like that for the extent to which you have questions for them. We'll do our best to collate those and direct those to the current students. And if you have any admissions related questions, I'll do my best to answer those as well. So before we launch into your questions, which will be the bulk of our session, why don't we just, as they say, popcorn around to do some introductions. So Fernanda, I'll start it with you, and then if everyone can subsequently just popcorn it over to someone else, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Fernanda. I'm a second-year MBA, and I'm from Brazil, born and raised.
Hi,
and Remy,
oh,
go ahead. Thanks, Teresa. Go ahead.
Oh, hi, everyone. I'm Teresa. I'm from China, and I'm currently a second-year MBA too.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shashank Giria. I'm also a second-year MBA student, and I'm from Mumbai, India.
And Remy, I think you are muted.
I'm mute. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Hi, everyone. My name is Remy Lawal. I'm originally from Lagos, Nigeria, and I'm really excited to be here.
And hi, everyone. My name is Lisa. I'm also a second-year MBA, and I'm born and raised in Belgium.
Lovely. All right. So thank you, everyone. And it looks like questions are coming in already quickly. So we'll turn to those. One thing I did forget to mention to say is it is just past noon here in New Haven, Eastern Time. We'll go until about 12:50 our time here, just to make sure that everyone has time to get where they need to. But wherever you are in the world, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. But thank you for joining us. But so we'll spend the next 45 minutes together as we go. So maybe if I can just start off fairly generally, and we don't need to go down the line with everyone answering. So if you feel it's a question that speaks to you, but certainly for almost every candidate I talk to, they're asking some combination of why should I pursue an MBA? Why should I go to Yale SOM? And why is now the right time? So does anyone feel like that particularly speaks to them?
I could go ahead. For me, a bit more on my background, maybe. Before coming to SOM, at school, I studied engineering, civil engineering. Then I started working for a B&A company in Belgium. So in a business world, really find my passion for sustainability there. And so for me, I really wanted to pursue an MBA to both focus on getting more like deep business knowledge and at the same time learn more about sustainability. So I'm thinking lots of courses from the School of Environment as well. And so for me, I wanted to do my MBA as soon as I made that realization, because I felt like both those topics of knowledge could like help me accelerate my career. And why SOM, I think, was also part of the question. For me, I really wanted to do an MBA in the US, given the reputation, but also because that I would be like really remote from everybody I knew in a way. And I felt that was a good way for me to, I don't know, be in a completely new environment, be absolutely independent. And SOM really spoke to me with its mission and with the fact that there's such a strong environmental community. So those are the two main reasons I chose SOM.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about myself too. So for me, the MBA was more a way of like changing careers. So before coming to SOM, I was a lawyer in Brazil, and I was already working with some ESG cases, but I wanted to pivot to the business side, like the intersection of business and sustainability. So that's why I did the MBA, decided to do the MBA. And Yale more specifically, I think Lisa mentioned the culture of the university, and also SOM has an amazing curriculum focus on the stakeholders, and that was an important thing for me. And also the possibility of taking classes in other schools like the Yale School of the Environment, the Yale Law School, and everything, and really leverage all the resources that Yale offer us was a big important point for me.
Yeah, I could go next. Also, prior to business school, I worked in consulting back in Nigeria for about 5 years. And I was more on the advisory side of things. And I felt like it was time for me to be part of the decision-making processes where like I was actually making impact and making those decisions firsthand. And I decided to apply to Yale because Yale is very big on business and society, and I loved that integration. And also the case method, it was something fascinating for me coming from Africa, where most of my experience has been. It was an opportunity to, learn from a very well-known and prestigious global school. So it really piqued my interest. And also just the community of people who had been there before that I reached out to were really warm. So that really got my attention. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. And I think it's fitting too that so many of you were talking about the culture, and that our first question is essentially asking about, talk about the Yale SOM culture. So we've started to do this. And I'll just put my own reframing on this as well, because I've worked in education for a long time. And one of the things that I think is always held up as a really important feature is, who are your peers? And so I'm curious to the extent that you can talk a little bit about, how much have your peers mattered in your ability to follow through with the mission of the school, or, your mission-driven reason for pursuing an MBA and coming to SOM?
Yeah, I can start. So I've heard about Yale. It's great culture before I came here. And I said, okay, every school was saying that to me, but not until I experienced myself at Yale SOM, I would say, well, the culture is so great. People, peers, and the second years, when it was first year, they were so great. So I was involved in finance club last year, recruiting for banking. And the second years, they provided tremendous support to me. So they almost held hand to hand with me and asked me, what kind of help do you want? So at the time, I almost wanted to, okay, leave me alone. So that's sort of the Yale culture. People really want to help you and help you succeed. So that's something I've been experiencing, and I hope you can come and experience it yourself.
Yeah, I can share too. One of the biggest things that I wanted to get out of my MBA experience was like different perspectives, because I had a certain, I was in financial advisory and then private equity, and it was very siloed in terms of my experience. And I wanted to explore other things. And coming here, there are people with really different professional experiences and geographical experiences, and the discussions that we have in our learning teams and classes, it comes out. And it you think about things that you wouldn't have otherwise thought of in from those discussions. And like Teresa mentioned, in terms of professional help that people are willing to give, it's tremendous, the amount of effort that at time and effort that people devote. And also in terms of the social activities, there are a bunch of different cultural clubs where we're allowed to conduct activities that are representative of our different cultures, but it's not exclusively for people who are from those cultures. It's for everyone. It's just we're including we're just conducting it here so that everyone can experience it, and a lot of people do participate in different forms, and it's just a very wholesome experience.
Yeah, I think that's a great transition too, is that we have a number of questions that are asking specifically, what opportunities are available for international students to get involved in campus, and to the extent that maybe it is different for international students, you can speak about international student experience, or just generally to be involved both at SOM and across the university.
Yeah, I could start off with that. For the support, I'd say the CDO was very helpful for me in my career search, and the alumni as well. There were a lot of casing that took place in some of the clubs. Consulting club was very helpful with that, with casing, which I found very helpful in my tech recruiting, because I worked in tech over the summer. I did finance, and a major part of that success was the casing I did with some members of the consulting club, and the tech club as well was very helpful with that. And like I said earlier, the CDO is very helpful with resources, openings, job openings, and on-campus recruiting as well for other peers. And I found that very helpful in like my search for an internship and a job.
And let me circle back. Sorry, Fernanda. Let me circle back to the recruiting aspect in a moment, because I think that will be something that will be really different, perhaps, for how international students move through the process. But I'm definitely seeing a lot of questions about the social, the academic, opportunities. So the answer could be maybe it's not that different for international students, but parking the recruiting for a moment, how is it different for international students? And then specifically, what does Yale offer to help you navigate those areas?
Yale has so many activities to offer and so many things you can do. So it's always up to you to choose what your interests, what your passion are. For me, I'm deeply involved in Greater China Club, and I'm one of the co-chairs this year. So I'm hosting a lot of inclusive activities for not only Chinese students, but also other international and local students to get together and know each other. For example, we held an international student food fair, so where we could provide Chinese food and everyone can taste. And also I'm a fan of sports, so I'm also involved in grad crew. So it's a crew club that's offering to all the graduate students. So every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we wake up at 6:00 a.m. to go to the sea and do crew rowing. So it's always another opportunity for you to meet not only business school students. So I mean, there are so many things for you to explore, and you just come here and you meet new people, and you go to different activities and the centers you will meet. I promise you, people here are very interesting.
Yeah, I think that, as Teresa said, Yale offers a lot of events for everyone, international or not international, across campus and at SOM. So we have the theaters here, we have things at the museum. I've attended to those, and it's super interesting, and you can meet people from other schools. And also at SOM, we have like a variety of events. And on top of that, I think international students have the affinity clubs. So for example, I'm in the leadership of ALAS, which is the Latin American club, and we do a bunch of social events. We also do some professional things, but like we're mostly focused on social, just for us to build our Latin community here. And we're also connecting with our alumni network in Latin America, which has been very interesting. So we can expand our activities. We're making events with them. And as I said, so like for the socials, we do a lot of barbecues. We're gonna do a Christmas dinner. We did like Dia de los Muertos events, Pan de Muertos. Like we celebrate different cultures from like different Latin American countries, and it's been great.
Maybe just a short addition on the on the academic side. I do feel that a lot of classes try to include case studies or I don't know, highlights of what's happening in other parts from the world except from the US. I would say the majority is still US focused because we're here and like US is such a like world superpower. So it's also super helpful to learn that perspective. But for example, in one of my YSE classes, climate change policy, we have like one session on like what's the strategy of China, India, Brazil, and another session on like more Middle East and like other countries. So I do think they try to like include that perspective as much as possible.
Great. Let me ask one follow-up question here, and then let's go back to the recruiting, because I think that's proving to be a big interest for people, and that makes sense. But I love this question. It's essentially reality versus expectations. So what surprised you when you arrived to New Haven, to Yale? What was the same or different than what you expected? And would you have made any changes, or what advice do you have for someone who's looking to navigate the same thing that you might have experienced?
I can jump in on that. One of the biggest things that I felt when I came here was like homesickness, because once you get here around August, there's so many things happening. One of my favorite quotes is like MBA is like drinking from a fire hose. You have your academics, recruiting, social, this, that. So it really adds up. And I personally had not lived too far away from home. So this was a first-time experience. And what was helpful was the fact that at least at SOM, there's a lot of community here, because New Haven as such doesn't take away people. It's not a big city. It's not like New York. So people won't disperse into the city. You will do or engage in activities, which there are plenty of, with people around you. So that helps you build community. And as the months roll on and winter gets here, that community is really helpful to keep you sane, and that's how you end up enjoying your time here.
To add to that, I'd say when I came newly in my first year, being a member of the Africa Business and Society Club was really helpful. Just asking questions about getting around banking, because I found that to be a different ballgame entirely. Like, it was totally different from what I was used to back home. And what you do to get your social security number, and banking, where to get like recipes that were very close to home taste, and that was really helpful in settling in. And also the cold weather, what kind of jackets to get and all of that. So the community was really helpful, and just really talking to peers, and also those that have been here longer than I have at the time. So I found that really helpful.
All right, so go ahead, Teresa.
Yeah, I will just be quick. I just want to emphasize, so it surprised me that people here, professors, staff, peers, students, they are nicer than I expected. Everyone here want to help you and provide you resources, want help you succeed. That's surprising me, the level of support I get.
Nice. Yeah, I love those stories too. I was talking with a current student literally just yesterday who was saying exactly that point, was, had come in thinking of professors as being, just this other group of people that you didn't interact as much with, and they really care about what's happening in your life, and think of you as a peer, person, colleague, and that was really refreshing. All right, so Remy teed us up perfectly for the recruiting as well. Maybe we'll just start very broadly at, how has recruiting been as an international student? Do you find, there to be differences? What advice do you have for candidates about thinking about being an international student in recruiting?
Yeah, for me, well, it was quite hectic combining that with schoolwork, because first year first quarter was quite a lot to handle at the same time. But what I found really helpful, I'd say, was the clubs. The clubs are really helpful. I always advocate for the consulting club, especially if you're going to go into consulting or tech. Why that? Because I found the resources in consulting, casing for consulting, very helpful for tech recruiting as well. So it's like killing two birds with a stone. So I found that really helpful with recruiting. Also talking to alumni, they're really warm people. They're always, even reaching out to them on LinkedIn. It doesn't even have to be more recent year alumni. Like, they're very, very warm. I found that really helpful. And the CDO channels on Slack were also very helpful. The different consulting CDO channel, tech channel, the tech channel, the consulting channel on Slack were also very helpful with resources. And just second years generally, like Liz mentioned earlier, were very helpful in recruiting as well. So yeah.
I think that for me, the biggest challenge and frustration, I would say, is the visa situation, right? It's not obvious and it's not always easy. So for the industry that I was recruiting for, which was initially like impact investing and sustainability and like green sustainable finance, many smaller firms don't sponsor the visa. So unfortunately, I was not able to apply to many of the places that I would love to go. In the end, I ended up at an amazing place. I'm very happy about it. So like I had to shift like for bigger companies and bigger firms because they like really take care of your visa, sponsor everything. So that's like one concern that I would recommend you looking into, like what realistically you can apply for. And in terms of like what helped me, just everything that Remy said. So like the clubs were amazing. The alumni network, it's really impressive. I was very surprised about like how you can just cold message people on LinkedIn or send them a cold email and all of them respond and sit down and talk to you. And like the Yale School of the Environment also has this mentorship program that was very useful. And yeah, like talking also to second years who did the internships the year before were also like very, very supportive.
Great. So there's a question here for me. I'll start on this, but someone wants to know how does the admissions office look at applications with regards to the career someone's coming from and relative to what they want to go to? Essentially, how are your goals evaluated in the application? And I'll say, we're certainly interested in how an MBA can help you navigate that journey, but we don't put a lot of stock in that. And maybe even by show of hands, I'm just curious, so from our 5 panelists, hopefully, we didn't preset this, but hopefully this will prove my point. But, by show of hands, who is moving into a different industry or expects to move into a different industry post-SOM than what they were in pre-SOM? So if you're moving into a different industry, hand up. All right, so 4 out of 5. Perfect. All right, so for the recording, it's 4 out of 5. So yeah, we didn't preset that, but that's about what we find. It's about 75% students move into a different industry. And so what that tells the admissions office is we'd be terrible at evaluating if we, sort of took you at, can we create this narrative of you've come from this and you're going back to this, if you will. We also, think that there's a lot of value you get in the program, getting inspired in different ways by peers, by the connections across the university, and you move in different directions. And so even if you put something on your application, we're still not going to hold you to that. So what I would encourage you to do in the application is certainly tell us what you're interested in doing, but also tell us how you think you're going to get there, what the gaps are, how an MBA, how Yale University can help. So I'll make a pivot from that and pick up on something that Lisa was talking about a little bit. I heard you mention a few times Yale School of the Environment. And so I'll put you on the spot and put others on the spot, just to talk a little bit about what your connections across the university have been, whether it's courses you've taken, centers you've engaged with, faculty at other schools who have really, been a part of your journey. But talk about what the broader Yale University resources have offered to you.
Sure. So as I mentioned, I'm really interested in the cross-section of business and sustainability, like many other people nowadays. And so I have taken the vast majority of my electives at the School of Environment because they give, like, I have enough, or like I have a lot of the business courses already in the core, like all of the basics of accounting, finance, whatever. And so I can focus in my electives on more like the scientific or like policy side of things on sustainability. So I'm taking lots of classes there. Also speaking with the students there, the way they think is pretty different from how business students think. So it's a really cool like clash, and like it's really challenging to have that different perspective. I'm also involved with the Center for Business and Environment at Yale called CBE. I'm doing kind of a research project with them, interviewing a bunch of alumni who are in corporate sustainability and writing a guide for them, which is like, which will be a good resource for students in the future, but also for me now, it allows me to connect with so many alumni in the space that I'm interested in. So that's really amazing. And they do other events as well. I haven't ventured too much into other schools' classes, but if I had more time, I would love to like go to the Jackson School, which is like public policy, or Divinity School. I'm looking into a Yale College class to maybe attend that. So like, there's so many cool things happening, and I wish I had more time to explore.
Yeah, I can add something to that. So, we just had our elective bidding. So it's such a daunting process because you have thousands of classes across college, the undergrad college and the grad school. So it's like you're in a candy store and you have to pick just like 5 or 10. For example, I've taken a class at the Yale Law School, and it's again really interesting because majority of them are law students, and like Lisa was saying, it's just interesting to have discussions with them, how they're thinking about these things, and learning from different kinds of professors. So the class that I'm taking had a session yesterday where we were discussing things with practicing lawyers in the field. So I got to argue with lawyers who actually do this on a day-to-day basis. So that was a really cool experience. And this really helps in terms of expanding what you already have. And if that is one of the goals that you have for your MBA, like experiment in other areas, this could really be helpful.
Great. I'm going to reframe a question here a little bit because I think you all have talked a little bit already about the career paths that you're choosing, but this person is specifically asking about unconventional career paths. So I'll reframe it to say, what advice can you give to someone, what advice can you give to someone who's non-traditional? Whether it's, on the way in, they feel like they're a non-traditional applicant, or someone who's pursuing a career that is non-traditional. What advice would you offer them?
Well, I would say if that part is by any chance entrepreneurship, I would advise to take some very nice courses that Yale offers. Entrepreneurship through acquisition is one I took last semester, and it was really great. And the professor is also really great, and is a CICT that really helps provide support to entrepreneurs on their journey, and just providing them with resources on how to navigate the process. So if by chance entrepreneurship is something you're considering, I think there's an ample number of resources at Yale for that. I have a friend who's doing that, and Yale has been a really great resource for that person.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I would definitely suggest you to leverage your identity as a Yale LSOM student and reach out to our great network of alumni on LinkedIn, or we also have a alumni connection website in our school. So definitely use that, because I'm taking a power and influence class this semester, and the professor asked us, how many of you, please raise your hand if you use your identity as a student to reach out to alumni? And nearly no one raised up their hand, but professor said, according to research, this is a very great power of yours when you are still a student, and you should use it and knock on many doors. And if you're untraditional students, you will find it very helpful.
Fernando, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, it was kind of like the same that Teresa said, and also like just I would say ask around, because I'm pretty sure that you're gonna find someone who had like similar background or going to the same industry that you want to, either at Yale or at SOM or in the alumni network. I was very surprised about, like pleasantly surprised about how diverse the backgrounds are in SOM. Like there are people who are doing so many different things that I didn't even know about, and are doing like so many interesting things after SOM. So ask around and you're going to find someone who can help you out for sure.
All right, so now we've got a very real question: is talk about where you live. Neighborhood, apartment building, what's the cost of living? How do you get groceries, go to the gym, these other things? Will I need a car? So talk about your living situation.
I can go ahead with that one. I live in I don't know exactly what the name of my area is. I think it's like close to Science Hill. It's basically 10-minute walk from SOM. Not in East Rock, not downtown, but like next to Dixwell, if you're already familiar with those kind of areas. And I love it because it's like 5-minute walk to School of Environment, 10-minute walk to School of Management, maybe like 20-minute walk to downtown. And I share a house with 4 other people, grad students from different schools, which I really enjoy because it gives me like even more connections and perspectives and conversations that I wouldn't have had otherwise. I pay around like $950-ish a month, which for me coming from Belgium was suddenly like quite a lot, I must say, but by now I got used to it. I don't have a car, and looking back now, I wish I did have a car. I'm lucky that one of my roommates has a car, so he goes grocery shopping a lot. But now we also started like online delivery, which can be like a way to go around the car situation. I did buy a bike, which I really enjoy. So I do think because New Haven is not big city like New York, where you have public transport that's really developed, some sort of transportation will help you save some time on walking. But yeah, I really enjoy the neighborhood I live in.
I can go next. Well, in first year, I lived in East Rock, which was about 8 minutes walk to SOM, which wasn't bad. Great experience living with other first years and second years as well in the neighborhood. There were a lot of people that were all SOMers on the same street, so we would have some hangouts every other day. And the rent was about $1,100, excluding utilities. Quite a lot for me, actually, considering like what rent used to be back home. But in second year, I find myself right now living at Whitney, like an apartment building, which I find really helpful because it's really close to SOM. It's just like 2 minutes to SOM. So during like the seasons that like now winter is fast approaching, or we're in winter already, I know it's going to be very helpful for those of us that are used to like hotter regions. I'm coming from Nigeria, so it's pretty hot where I'm coming from. So in first year, I struggled a bit with it, having to walk 8 minutes to 10 minutes in the cold to get to class. So, but right now I'm very close to SOM, and the location is very good for catching the bus to like downtown or wherever. So I found that really helpful and time saving, and it just really helps with your movement. And the rent is about $1,200 including utilities, and I think it's worth it because it's very close to SOM. So I can just wake up 30 minutes to class and get ready. So that was the catchy thing for me. Yeah.
I'll even pick up on this, this idea about your time. I've heard a running joke from students from time to time that, there are all these things that you do, right? You've got your academics, you've got your recruiting, you've got the hockey club or, other social activities, your networking, and I'm seeing several questions here in the Q&A about essentially, how do you do it all? Where are you sacrificing? What are you, sort of missing out on in order to make it happen? Because it sounds like y'all are doing it all.
I keep saying this, I feel like MBA is a 2-year course on calendar management where you have academics, assignments, clubs, recruitment, and then social. And so you kind of do also have to at times block out periods to do nothing, because otherwise you'll explode. Everyone finds their own way. I don't think there's a silver bullet to this. It's just prioritization. So you have to get comfortable with the fact that you might not be able to do 100% of the things. It's just a fact, because there are so many things going on at all points of time. It's impossible to be at everything. So you kind of maybe attend to the best of your ability, as many events as you can, or as many things as you can. And different people have different, again, priorities and capabilities in terms of how much they want to do. So they feel free to define it for yourself. There is no ideal to strive for. It's just what you want to do.
For me, my strategy is I have different priority in different semester. So for my first year, fall semester, I was focusing on recruitment. So I'm pretty lucky that I'm done with recruiting by the end of December. So from spring first year semester, I started to explore the wide campus of Yale, what it has to offer. So I've been to City, Remy already mentioned, where it provides a lot of entrepreneurial courses and a lot of innovative ideas. And I also did a lot of traveling. So I did, if you come here, you will know we have an international experience week. It's a 10-day travel to a different country. I went to Bhutan and I experienced the great culture there, and why it's the happiest country in the world. So I also went to Israel. Okay, at the time, Israel was still safe. So I went there with a bunch of Yale students at the end of May. It's called iTrack. So for me, second semester was about traveling, experiencing culturally. And this semester, it's a lot of immersive and different course taking. So I'm in Yale Law School and also in architectural school, just to see how different people think about the same issue. And as a business student, I can also provide different perspective to the classroom. So I feel I'm valuable. So next semester, doing exchange to Paris, and I'm very excited about that. So for me, it's a theme setting for different semester and have a priority.
Maybe to add one small thing, or yeah, I don't know if it's small. For me, it was kind of impossible to do all of these things. Like Shashank said, you really need to prioritize. And I think I overloaded on the course, like how many electives I chose this semester for sure. So I know now, don't do that, because then you miss out too many other things. But I wanted to highlight that I do feel like a lot of students are struggling with finding the balance, and that SOM is trying to provide support now by we have forgot what she's called, like a health and wellness counselor now on campus, somebody you can talk to when you're really struggling, because business school can be a lot. It's a lot of pressure to learn, to recruit, to socialize. It is a lot, and I really appreciate that Yale's trying to help with that mental side of it as well.
I think that's a really important point to voice. So yeah, thank you. I think sometimes, one can struggle with those things silently. It's important for people to know they're in it together and that there are resources available. So thank you for that. Let me take one here. There's always a question about scholarships. And so some folks want to know a little bit more about what the scholarship options that are available for international students. So I can say at a base level, there's nothing different for international students. Everyone is considered at the time of their admission for a scholarship. There are different loan options depending on whether you are able to qualify for US rate loans or have a cosigner. And so, full transparency, the rate that you get as an international student may not be quite as good as a U.S. Student, because U.S. students may have subsidized loans by the U.S. government. But our team works really closely with a number of private loan providers to try to find you the best available rates. So you will be guaranteed to be able to borrow up to, I think it's 80% of the cost of attendance, simply from being admitted to the school. And then you'll also be considered for scholarships. And the school does a number of things too. Remy had mentioned entrepreneurship earlier. There are different loan options and seed fundings that are available for entrepreneurs. There's a loan forgiveness program available to everyone within their first 10 years of graduating. So the university tries to think, fairly deeply about how do we make this work for you, no matter what you're recruiting for and what your financial situation is. So it's all to say, keep talking with us as we move through this process. We try to make it work for everyone individually. I don't have a good pivot off of that. So I see a question here about raw cases. So we'll just make a sort of a hard transition there. What's your experience been with raw cases? People hear that those are really unique to Yale LSOM.
I can go ahead. I think for me, to be honest, I don't see when doing the cases, they don't make too much of a big, of a difference. It's like a different format. You have more videos and everything. So it's more like the real world in a way when you have to find the information. But I must say, when I attended school, I thought it was going to be just use Google and find everything yourself. That's not the case. They do combine information already that makes it easier to gather, but it gives a bit of variety. But for me personally, it didn't make the biggest difference, to be honest.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Lisa, because it took me a second to remember what exactly the definition of it was, because when you're going through the case and when you're doing it, it's less about the case itself, more about the analysis of it, how to look at the situation and what insights you can bring. So the more you read up on the situation or the protagonists and etc., the more you can contribute to the discussion that happens in the class. So it again depends on how much you're willing to put into the research of the situation. So and it can be helpful because the professors are obviously deeply knowledgeable about the topic. So bringing up relevant and points that go second or third level into the discussion are generally very helpful.
Yeah, I'll say I appreciate transparency always. And one of the things that I think Lisa mentioned earlier as well is that honestly, a lot of the cases are focused on sort of more traditional audiences, and I think props to the case writing team, as they also recognize that and are always thinking about, how do we make sure that more of these cases are written from the perspective of an international lens, from the point of view where the protagonist is a woman or someone who's not traditional in the representation. So hopefully, you and our prospective students will also find that it's a place that really appreciates that transparency and the conversation afterwards as well. Let's keep it on the academic environment for the moment. So, thinking about your learning teams, your cohort, someone's asking about, what do you find in terms of the diversity of, perspectives, backgrounds, points of view, et cetera, within the classroom? And how is that added to your experience?
Well, for me, I would say there was a lot of that in first year. You do a lot of teamwork, learning team activities. And for me, I would say it just really helped broaden my perspective, to even issues that wasn't really in my fore, just having people from diverse backgrounds. First, it helped come up with richer solutions to tasks or solutions to problems we had to solve. And also just really appreciating the diversity of experience. as someone mentioned earlier, like there are people who, where you're thinking, oh, I have 4 or 5 years experience. There are people who have had a lot more, and there are people who have a shorter experience. And generally, I'll just say it helps with what reality is going to be, because when I interned, it was a very good experience I've had firsthand, because I got to work with my peers on assignments and projects. So when I got to the workplace, it was like a continuation of that, because there were people from diverse backgrounds that I had to work with, and I really found that helpful, like getting comfortable with that environment.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, I think that Yale does a very, very good job in bringing people from very different background and very different careers, and also people who are going to different places. So I think that creates a very collaborative environment and a lot of exchange between students. I mean, the discussions in the classroom are always interesting because, I mean, as a lawyer, I'm hearing someone who comes from, I don't know, more of a finance background, and it's a totally different perspective. So I learned something from them. And the learning teams, I also really like how they were designed. I love my learning team, and we've learned a lot from each other. Each one of us has a very different background. So when we sit down to do the assignments, each one brings a different perspective, and we learn a lot, and we can actually make it like a little easier to do the assignments because, oh, I don't know this. And then a colleague explains to me, and then we learn together, and we're able to do something and share the work between us. So, yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, I do want to be sensitive to the time. So maybe we'll just do one last question here, and we'll go around. Everyone could take maybe 60 seconds or less with a very big question here, which is, what do you wish you had known when you were applying to business school, and would you have done anything differently?
I think looking back and rereading through my essay, I wish I would have been more like honed in more on one specific part, like one specific part of the reason why I want to be here. I tried to like highlight many of the reasons and like kind of show like I've been working up to this my last couple of years. But looking back, I realized that, or I think that like the more personal, the more honest, like the essays are, and like showing your personality and why you want to be here, I think that's the most important thing. And like you see that in like then now the diversity of people, like you're all passionate about something. And like I'm not an admission officer, so I don't know for sure, but I feel like if I would rewrite my essays, I would like zone in on that even more.
Wait, sorry, Jared. Could you repeat the question again?
Yeah. What do you wish you had known when you were applying to business school, and would you have done anything differently?
Oh, so from the application perspective.
Right.
Oh, sorry.
Can I actually add 1 second something? I also wish I ended up being very lucky, ended up in SOM, but like the importance of the community and the people who are at school makes so much of the experience. I would definitely recommend to talk to people from different schools and feel what the best match is.
For me, nothing really. I'll just say more of an advice would be to very much try to align like your values with like in your application, like authentic, like Liz mentioned, just be as authentic as possible, and aligning what your values are with like SOM's mission, and like where SOM really just comes into play for you, like what just makes it stand apart from the rest of apart from other business schools. So primarily that would be my advice, and to also leverage the alumni network. It's always very good to hear firsthand from those who have been through the program before, are currently second years, just to get an idea of what the experience is. I think there's a lot more you get more insights than you would from maybe just a website. So yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. For me, that's one thing that I wish I had done before submitting my application, is reaching out to students or to alumni. I actually did not do that. I only did it after I submitted the application. And I think that if I had done it before, I would have had more insights. I would have felt like a little bit less anxious about the whole process, because at least I knew I could have gotten like tips and like talk to people and feel more calm about it. And I've been talking to a lot of prospective students who are on the process, and I'm seeing like how much this helps. So I wish I had done that too. So feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to talk.
I just want to add a little bit. We have student ambassador website on our school, and if you want to reach out, you can reach out to those ambassadors. They are always happy to talk to you, and feel free to reach out to us as well. So we're here to help you.
I'd just say one should go through the school and what exactly, like by speaking to people and understanding what exactly the school has to offer and trying to see if it's an organic fit, rather than reshaping your application to forcefully fit into the school. Because I think you guys are trained to detect like what is organic and what is not. So if it seems genuine, it'll make more of an impact rather than a forced fit. It somehow or the other comes out in an application.
Wonderful. Well, we'll finish where we started, which was, just talking about, the mission and the culture. And I often find that candidates are somewhat self-selecting and finding their way to even, considering applying to SOM, which I always take as a really heartening thing, which means there's so many people out there who are focused on not just business, but also society, right? So thinking about how those two interplay. And so wherever you are in your journey, whether you end up at SOM or not, I will, privately be, cheering for you to be addressing those larger issues in society. I hope that we will have an opportunity to meet. I hope that we'll have an opportunity to interact in person. So to the extent that you can, keep, joining these sessions and come visit us on campus if that's an opportunity for you as well. And just keep the conversation going. Definitely cheering for you and wishing you the best in your journey. But on behalf of the panel, and thank you to the panel all for taking this time to join us. But thank you to you for spending some time with us. And yeah, we will follow up afterwards with some contact information so that we can keep that conversation going as well. All right. So have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thank you.